Let's start with the London one, though. Obviously, me and Freddie were very lucky to be in attendance for that game. It was nice to be. Well, it was my first time in the media at Wembley. I know Fred's obviously done it before, but it was nice to be at the home of football. And as I've been joking, I'm going to make this joke go even longer. I know we are the famous New England Patriots, and we were at Wembley, but not the famous New England Patriots that a lot of people are familiar with. Fred, obviously, it looked good at one point, but Jacksonville turned up and got that win, 32-16. What did you make of the game? And obviously, being in attendance will give you a different perspective.
I mean, well, firstly, fantastic day out. Like, me and you had a lot of fun talking to the fans as well. A lot of good score predictions, and that was really, really good. And thank you for a lot of people that chatted to us.
They were right as well. Sorry, a lot of people picked the Jags, and that hurts me. But they were right.
It's nice how many people wanted to talk to us as well. Like, actually seeked us out rather than the other way around, which was cool. But I mean, the Jags came and did exactly what they needed to do. They had a game plan. It felt like it's something that I wanted to cover in the press conference room, but I didn't really get the opportunity. But it felt like, right, the run game's going good. We're sticking with the run game. I didn't know whether I wanted to ask, was that the plan all along, or was that a look in the game, but then they adjusted to then move to that? Because Tank Bigsby had 26 carries. Lawrence only threw the ball 20 times. It's quite even, but still 26 carries is a bit more than you usually get from a running back. But yeah, they played well. I think there was a moment in the game where the Jags had a really long drive down the field, and it resulted in a field goal rather than a touchdown. But it was at a point where I think that made them 22-10, I think. And I thought if it was a closer scoreline, it was them sort of moments that the Jags keep having that have been losing them games. They go down the field and they either get intercepted, the turnover, or they just are just outside field goal range, and they seem to have good progression, but they always end up with no points at the end of it. And they got a field goal, but it was that sort of moment where I was like, this is quintessentially what the Jags season's been about, is some good football, but ultimately the least amount of points or no points. So yeah, the game plan worked. 26 carries, 118 yards, 2 touchdowns for Tank Bigsby, easily his best game. I mean, we were talking Phil's show about how he wasn't really a non-factor this year, and hasn't been a huge factor this year, but he's got 415 yards, four touchdowns. That's 13th best in rushing yards this year. And he's got at least 15 plus less carries than all the people that are around him there. So he's sort of doing like a Jalen Warren in a way of last year, like not having loads of carries, but making the most out of them carries when he gets them opportunities, which is really good. And that's what you need. It was Brian Thomas was excellent. Brian Thomas is a one. He is a one. This tandem that he's got with sort of him and Evan Engram, this combo is looking really good for the Jags. It does make Christian Kirk a little bit of a non-factor on occasion, which hurts me as I've got him in fantasy football. But yeah, they did what they needed to do. I felt like in the press conference after, it was quite somber. There wasn't as much adulation as there was in like the Vikings one, for example, because it's different, isn't it? The Jags are 2-5. That they got that the Vikings got 5-0, still unbeaten on the road as well. As the Jags have been here for a week, maybe there was a little bit of the Jags in that game, a bit like, right, we're ready to go home in a way, or ready to get back to Florida and reset and game plan going more. So yeah, that's my sort of thing on the Jags. I'm not really focused on the Patriots there, because I thought I'd let you guys sort of.
No, well, we'll stick with the Jags for now, though. Adam, Trevor Lawrence, according to the stats, delivered his best performance of the season. I did read that their offense produced an impressive 0.431 EPA per pass play, but obviously that's expected points because the Jags have not been doing great. The New England defense only managed to pressure him twice. I think it clearly was shown that with him having more time, as Fred said, Brian Thomas had a big game. What did you like from Lawrence? And sort of he definitely grew into the game as it went on.
Yeah, I thought he looked all right. I thought I just felt like he didn't really have much to be worried about, to be brutally honest. In a weird kind of way, this is how exactly the same as what I thought about Caleb Williams against the Jags. It kind of felt the same. Caleb Williams didn't have anything to worry about. And this kind of feels the same. It's almost like we've just dropped down in quality kind of thing. That's kind of how it felt a little bit. So I think he had a solid game. He wasn't asked to do a great deal. As Fred said, he only had 20 pass attempts. That's not a lot, really, for a quarterback. They did rely heavily on the run, especially once they got the lead. I think they had something like 20 passing plays in a row at one point, which nearly sent me to sleep in the afternoon. So that was quite nice. But yeah, it was. I think that Lawrence he's clearly a very good. He is a very good quarterback. He's clearly very capable, and I think that they need to put the right people around him. It's really the O-line. This is where I think a lot of the problem is for Lawrence. I think he's got the weapons. As you said, Brian Thomas, he looks great. Ingram coming back is huge, I think, for Lawrence, because it really is the safety net, which is good. And I think there's a lot of other guys there that are capable as well. I think Christian Kirk is a capable quarterback. He's just not a quarterback that should be earning 28 million a year. Kind of that's the problem with people like Christian Kirk. But I think he is a good wide receiver. And
no, Dave, I was going to say that to you there, but don't worry. You said quarterback. Yeah. I know what you meant. Friendly as well.
So yeah, I think it's one of them things where Lawrence looks like a solid quarterback who will do well if he's got everything around him helping him out. But he's not, and I don't think he's ever going to be one of these guys who can sort of put, if you've got everything sort of falling around you, he's never going to be the guy that drags the team over the line. I think that's the issue with Trevor Lawrence. And so it does make you feel a little bit like, should he have been paid as much as what he has been paid? Do you think that this is like someone who is going to get you over the line and be able to win you a Super Bowl? Because that, if you're paying a quarterback this kind of money, that's what you're hoping for, isn't it? I mean, that's what he's there for. So I think that's the only issue with Lawrence myself. But as a good quarterback who definitely deserves to be in the league and to be in the league for probably the next 10 years, yeah, absolutely. But just not the top guy.
Fred, how do you feel about that assessment? Because you are a big Trevor Lawrence fan. Obviously, the hype that he had coming out of college, I think Adam might have been the one who said this in the group. Maybe them winning that game was probably not the best thing for the Jags, because you mentioned about the atmosphere inside, right? I mean, I joked with you, and it wasn't even me being a bitter Patriots fan. There were Jags fans going crazy, like even last night, like, oh, singing Duval. I'm like, well, you got 2 wins. And if anything, I don't think this is weirdly a great thing for the franchise. Do you think Lawrence is ever capable of getting them to, to elevate guys around him and get them there? And the issue is the coaching staff, or even if it changes, is it just that they need to build like maybe a better roster than, say, for example, we saw Mahomes. Yes, he didn't have a great game, but we know what Mahomes can do on his day.
It's a culmination of a lot of things. You've sort of given the truck and trailer analogy there.
Yeah,
is he a truck or is he a trailer? For Trevor Lawrence, and I don't think he knows. I don't think we know really. Like we don't really know. Adam said that he's not a guy who's going to raise guys around him. I think he is. I think he can do that. But this game plan needs to work for him. The problem is we were promised Andrew Luck, and it's just not that. What I mean? When he got drafted, he's not Andrew Luck. Not that anyone is like Andrew Luck at the minute, and you certainly hope that they've not got the Andrew Luck injury tendencies. And Trevor Lawrence, luckily, hasn't got that. He doesn't miss much time. I just think when you say about how much money he's been paid, and you say about him quarterback, you look around the league like, well, what? And you say again about, was it great than winning the game? What's going into the draft that's better than Trevor Lawrence? I'm not sure there's that much. There's a few, I think, but this quarterback class in the draft is not as maybe I think a lot of people are now sort of looking at them more. Yes, there's going to be ones that go in that top bracket, but should they really? We've seen in the last few years the quarterback position now is obviously it's the biggest position in football, and it has been for a long time. But the problem is then there's an element where these players get overdrafted. Look at Kenny Pickett with the Steelers. Like, it's happened for many years. And you look at the free agency, is there anyone going to be better than Trevor? No. Like, I think one aspect they're thinking of is that people think the Jags are stuck with Trevor Lawrence. And I just don't think that's the case. I don't think they're stuck with him. I think it's good that they have him. But they do need to figure out what they're doing as a franchise as a whole, because they really need to figure some things out. But they got to the playoffs last year, didn't they? No, not last year, the year before.
No, they had that when he hurt his ankle, didn't they? I think, sorry, what I was more getting at with Doug Pederson, right? I don't know, they were 9-3 or 8-2 or 8-4, and then he had an ankle injury and they kept messing up when they were going to start him, and then they had a big losing streak, didn't they? And they didn't make playoffs. Yeah. So I think we all believe in Trevor Lawrence to a degree, and obviously wouldn't go get someone else in the draft. Well, I won't.
But you're alluding to a little bit of what Lawrence, Adam spoke about what Lawrence's capabilities are. Like that, it ultimately the success of this team is on his shoulders, as well as a few other key individuals on that team. And I think he is probably capable to go and do that. But I think it's tough. They're a tough organization to sort of like, but dislike at the same time, because there's players on there that are clearly talented. They're clearly good. So yeah, we'll see.
I think he's capable of being able to be a starting quarterback back in the NFL for like 10 plus years. I think that's clear that he can do that. I just don't feel like he elevates these players up to where they need to be. I think that the problem is, and obviously not, it is difficult. Not everyone is Patrick Mahomes. You can't all be Patrick Mahomes. That's fair enough. But the problem is that you're paying him more than Patrick Mahomes. And I think that's where you sort of start thinking to yourself, it's a really difficult one, because obviously quarterbacks, it's always next one up is the highest one. But sometimes you do sort of think to yourself, actually, that's not necessarily the best thing for your organization, and that there needs to be some sort of conversation there where that shouldn't always be the case. He's clearly very talented. He's going to be there for many, many years. He will do very well for them. I don't ever see him winning a Super Bowl. And at the end of the day, what's the point if you don't?
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, but then on the flip side of it, Drake May yesterday for the Pats, I think he's got it. He's got an it factor about him. He definitely has. When he plays, you could tell. I said to Sky at least 3 or 4 times that was a smart quarterback play. Yeah. That was him. That was a very smart play that he just did there. Whether it was rushing then sliding, whether it was throwing the ball away at the right time, it was like, a lot of these rookies aren't doing that. A lot of these rookies are, especially ones that are mobile, and you can tell that he's conscious about that. But then, do I see Drake May win the Super Bowl with the Patriots? Unfortunately, no, I don't. I think he's good, but I don't see that for him. And that's what the Jags did quite well yesterday. Is actually, because I said in the press conference on Friday, how do you scheme for a rookie quarterback? And Doug gave the answer that he gave, but this is how you do it. You only allow 38 rushing yards, and you put the ball in his hand. And that's what they did. And I'm not saying that it was May's fault they lost the game at all, because he didn't have any help from his defense. But that's the levels of it, I suppose. So yeah, but I think Sky equally came away from that game going, we've got something here with Drake May.
Yeah, Adam, what did you think? Because obviously he had 26 of 37 passes, 276 yards, 2 touchdowns, and stats aside, there were a couple of turnover plays where there was a couple of drop picks, but I think him in general, for a second start, like Freddie said, I think there is an it factor there. I mean, after 2 games, we're never going to know if he's going to go on and win a Super Bowl, but clearly the being benched for the first part has probably helped him. And there's not a lot of good playmakers on that team. There's a lot of young guys with talent in the future, but I think he did well for what's considering his supporting cast.
Yeah, I mean, I liked him in college. I think he looks like a really good quarterback. He clearly has got signs of being capable and doing well. I think it's ridiculous that he's playing. I really do. Your sort of like the coaching staff to bring him in, I think is just stupid at the moment. Myself, like he needs to spend more time sort of like sitting and I don't quite know what they think they're gaining from it, to be brutally honest, at the moment, other than you're just going to end up with your quarterback getting hit quite a bit. So I don't really know what the logic is there. But yeah, I mean, he's doing well considering it's only his second start, and he looked all right. I thought he looked all right in the first week's game that he played. I thought he looked okay, and I just think with a lot of these quarterbacks, I mean, the idea of literally just throwing them in straight away is normally a bad thing to do. It doesn't normally work. Now, you know, we've got a couple of other quarterbacks who are rookies this year where it seems like they've done okay and they're looking pretty good. But more often than not, it doesn't work and you're just asking for trouble. And I just think it's a bit of a crazy thing to do. You're 1-6 at the moment. Would you not have been 1-6 with Jacoby Brissett? Like, in the grand scheme of things, does it? I think for his development, I think it would have been better for him to have carried on sitting for longer. But you know, they obviously feel that it's the right time to bring him out, and he looks all right. He does look good, and I think that he's definitely got a chance to do something. I mean, as you say, it's really difficult to be able to say anything concrete after 2 games, but he does look all right.
Yeah, I think before we move on, I just think it's a Boston media thing. I think it's the city that you're in, right? If he was on the Tennessee Titans, you probably can afford to sit someone for a year, but you pick someone number 3, and it's the Patriots, and they're almost like. And I think losing to Miami, given how bad and they are, and a divisional rival, I think I said to Fred after that game, if we'd won that game, they probably would have stuck with Jacoby. But also, I don't think there's a right or wrong to this. I think you could keep him off for a year, but also, how better to learn than to be out there doing it? I don't know.
I mean, I would argue a lot of very good quarterbacks sat for a year.
You're probably the only franchise who does that and it works well. Like historically, the Packers are renowned for that.
It worked pretty good for Kansas City, I would say.
But they did have Alex Smith.
There's a lot of these quarterbacks who, when they first came out of the draft, they weren't like thought of as amazing. They were given a year plus to sit and sort of be behind the starting quarterback, and they did pretty well. If you're going to come out and say it's the media that's causing the problem, that just seems a bit weak when it comes to the team.
Oh, yeah.
Like you've just got to come out and go, well, we're rebuilding, so what did you expect? That's kind of what I would argue with that is.
Fred, you know, I didn't even say this to you actually. There was some snippets from the Mayo press conferences. He said something about building another dynasty, and then yesterday kept saying do your job, and it all felt very, maybe more as a fan, which is sometimes a detriment. It felt like quite cheesy and cliche. Like, I know it's obviously a Patriot slogan, but it's still associated with Bill Belichick. And it does still feel like that lasting thing. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It just feels like these cities like New York with Zach Wilson and these young guys, there's a point where they're just earlier than other cities. With Drake May, they want to see them at this point in the year. And Kansas City, people forget, the reason Mahomes didn't play is because it's Kansas City. They hadn't won much before that. I know Alex Smith was a good level quarterback, but it wasn't like there was a media demand for Patrick Mahomes. There's a lot of experts out there who didn't even have him being a
start. A lot of people thought they were stupid to move up and get him.
Yeah. So, but it's always fun playing this game, right? If only we could all predict the future. And speaking of